I am so interested in hearing what this distinguished gentleman has to bring to us. I mean, he's responsible for many of us waking up. I mean, when you look out in the truth-seeking community, many of what we know and many of the people that you see out there doing what we're doing, we got our start from this gentleman right here. So, without any further ado, I'm going to welcome back our dear brother and our dear friend, Jordan Maxwell. Welcome, Jordan.
Well, thank you, Curtis. Always happy to be here with you. I don't really consider myself to be, truth. In other words, what I'm saying is that, I've been doing this since 1959. For 53 years. Before there was a truth movement, I was still out there doing it. I was giving lectures back in 1960, 62, 63 about how the world works and how the stuff is going, how it all works. So I was doing this some 53 years ago, especially professionally about 40 years ago. So I don't relate to being in anything called a patriot or truth movement. I've just been doing what I've been doing for the past 53 years. I don't know what you call it, but that's what I'm doing. So, I just love learning how the world works.
Absolutely, and believe me, and we've all benefited from it, and many of us out there are starting to wake up, Jordan, especially to what's going on globally, and for those of us who live in the Western Hemisphere, what's going on with the government. So when people saw the topic for this evening, how the U.S. government really works, this is something that everybody wanted to hear. And a big part of that, what we're going to start off the evening with, is commerce. You have a lot to share with us with regard to commerce. So with that, I'm going to step aside and take it away, Jordan.
Well, okay. There's so much that I could say about this subject because there's so many different avenues when you get into something as big as the U.S. government, and how it started and where it came from and where it is now and where it's going. And so, like I said, this is a very, very big subject. But you're going to start somewhere. You might as well start with with commerce and understand what commerce is, because we all live each day in a commercial system. And there's been a lot of movies coming out lately, TV shows about zombies, and some major movies about zombies. The reason why they're promoting the idea of zombies right now is because all land in, probably all land in the world, but all land in the Western Hemisphere, and especially all land in America, North America, is under something called cemetery law. There's a special kind of law governing land and buildings, etc., that most people have never heard of. Never heard of it. It's called cemetery law. And the reason why we have cemeteries is because they're covered with cement. And so, we've got cemeteries. And so, our country is full of cement. It's got buildings everywhere, and highways and streets. And so all land in America is under cemetery law. And therefore, if you are living in America in a building or working in a building of any kind, then you are living and working in a cemetery under cemetery law. And so that being the case, if you are what was referred to in law, in banking law, you're as a human, you're referred to as movable property, because someone owns you and you're able to move around. So in law, in a court, humans are called movable property. And so therefore, if you're moving around and operating and breathing, and you're on land, then you're in a cemetery and you're living. So therefore, you're obviously a zombie. So that's why we are having the movies, and Hollywood's telling you all about the zombies now, because that's us. We are zombies by law. I mean, by definition. If all land is in the cemetery law, and if all buildings and homes and houses are under cemetery law, and you're alive, breathing, and living in those buildings and operating in those buildings, then you must be a zombie. So that takes care of that. Now we move on. So what you need to know is, first of all, is that the ancient peoples in the world, especially the Romans, they developed an idea, but it went back way further than Rome. It went way back into the ancient world, all the way back into Babylonia, Sumeria, Phoenicia, Canaan, probably even somewhat in Egypt also. Thousands of years ago, the idea was developed that there were two things on the earth only. The earth only has two facets to the earth: water and land. That's all there is either water or land. And so the idea is to develop two different kinds of law: the law of the land and the law of water. And people hear that term all the time, the law of the land. We've heard that, especially in school. Well, this and that is the law of the land. But no one ever explains, why do you use that term, law of the land? It's because there is a law of the sea which opposes it. And of course, the law of land and sea do oppose each other everywhere. So the law of the sea is the law of money. It's referred to as the law of water. The law of the sea is money. And so, and then of course the law of the land is the law, the particular culture of law that people live on, because the people live on the land. And so there's a difference between the people on the land and money. Because you see, and people who live on the land, that's a particular group of people, a particular culture or country. And they have their own customs, their own way of living, their own style of living, their own words and terms and customs. And so we're told, when you're traveling around the world, remember you're in a different country. So you can do things in Russia you can't do in America. You can do things in South Africa you can't do in Israel. So it's the law of the land, the people's custom on their land. But the law of water, well, of course, water's everywhere. And so the law of water is banking, which means that you can get a credit card from a bank in Australia and go to Russia and live pretty good, and then vacation in China and get a credit card in America and go to Afghanistan, because money is money, period. It doesn't matter what culture. You're talking about banks, world banking, money. So that's called the law of water. So this is why we have terms like, money goes through your hands like water. No. By law, money is considered liquid assets. So money is under water. It's under maritime admiralty. And if you start and think about the terms that we use each day and how it relates to water in some way or another when you're talking about commerce. For instance, we say that money, as I said, we say that money goes through your hands like water. No, money is water. We say that you're drowning in a sea of debt. Your house is underwater. Your bank account has dried up. So if you're going to buy something, buy it with a sale. If you're going to buy a lot of cars, you can get a fleet price. And even the banks need to be bailed out. And, of course, you're trying to stay afloat and keep your head above water with a cash flow from a slush fund because you need to pool your resources or you'll be all washed up. And the government has to trickle down economy. And so once you begin to see the words in banking are all based on maritime admiralty and maritime, MERA, M-E-R, MERA. Maritime admiralty is, we call it admiralty law. That's why you have an admiral in the Navy. And that's interesting, too, because the body of a church is called a nave, N-A-V-E, and so the church is involved in government and setting up of Western civilization under the church. So the body of a church is called a nave, N-A-V-E. This is why we have a navy, N-A-V-Y. It's based on ancient symbols and words and terms coming out of the ancient world. So the law of water is the law of money, banking. This is why I've said before, where do you find a bank? Well, you find banks on both sides of a river. They're called a river bank. And what does a river bank do? Well, it directs the flow of the currency, because your money is called currency, because it's an ebb and flow of the current. It goes through your hands like water. And so, all of this can also be traced back to the idea that all ships, and here's another facet of this thing, all ships are female. I don't care if it's a rocket ship or a sailing ship. It doesn't matter what kind of a ship it is, an airship. It doesn't matter. All ships are female, period, by law. This is why you'll hear captains talking about their ship. They'll say, oh, she's a very seaworthy, or she's a good ship, or she's this and she's that. She, because all ships are female by law. The reason why is because she delivers the product. And so when a ship pulls into harbor, she is delivering products. And she's in the delivery room. She's delivering products that she was in labor to produce. And so now she's bringing in, articles to sell. So she is producing products and bringing them into the country to be sold. So that's why all ships are she, because she delivers the product. And in relation to human reproduction, the male manufactures while the female delivers the product when she's in labor. She's building the product, she's in labor after he has manufactured the product. And people might think this is all kind of silly and nonsensical. It's because you're not educated. Because once you understand how the International Maritime Admiralty of the British people operate and how the international banking cartels actually operate, then you will begin to see how you have been hoodwinked. You've been fooled on how the world really works. And so many times I try and explain things to people, and they've never heard such a thing, so they think I'm full of bull. But no, just go back and do your homework. You'll find out. It might take you 40 years like it did me, but you'll find out that the world does not work the way you think it does. So let me give you another example. When a ship pulls into port, she pulls into port. Where she parks and where she stops is called her berth. So she's in her berth. If you're going to go on a boat trip, you go down to the docks and to the pier, and you're going to go to her particular berth. And B-E-R-T-H is where the ship sits, and it's tied off at the dock. And so anything that comes in, any products that she is bringing in, you have to have a paperwork on. And so when she brings in, say, $800 million worth of Toyotas, say, or televisions at the harbor in her berth, when she stops, she each time you're taking off one of the items, Each item has to have what is called a certificate of manifest, because yesterday the ship wasn't here. But today we have $800 million worth of Toyotas that came in. So they have manifested. So we have to have paperwork on each and every item. So each one of the TVs or whatever the articles are that are being brought in under commerce, because she has delivered the product and she's in her berth, and so each one of those items have to have a certificate. And on that certificate, you've got to find out how much does it weigh, how many doors does it have, what color is it, does it have air conditioning, or what it is. And so all the vital signs on whatever it is you're selling has to be on that birth certificate. So that when you were born, your mother, her water broke. And so when her water broke, she delivered you in the delivery room. She was delivering a product. You are referred to in international maritime law as a human resource. So if you're going to get a job, you go to the human resource, because that's all you are, is a resource. Like rubber and iron and glass and whatever, and oil, and you're a resource too. They buy and sell you like they do anything else. And so you have to have when your mother, when your mother signs the birth certificate, where she signs, it says, look on the birth certificate where your parents signed on the birth certificate. It doesn't say parent. It doesn't say mother or father. It says informant. And look on the left-hand bottom of the birth certificate. You'll see it goes to the Department of Commerce. Again, because your body is a security on the New York Stock Exchange. Your physical body is a security on the New York Stock Exchange. Because you are a human resource. Your birth certificate goes to the Department of Commerce. So therefore, it's an interesting way to look at the way the world operates in banking. And since the ship, as it's sitting there, as I said, each one of the items has to have its own certificate, or we call it a birth certificate. And if you are taking off one of the cars or TVs or whatever, and it falls down and breaks, well, you lost that one. And so that's all right as long as you have a death certificate. And it's got to be signed by the dock, because that's where the ship was sitting, is at the dock. So the dock has to sign your birth certificate. And if you die, if you're born dead, then they have to sign your death certificate. The dock signs it. And this is why, we use terms like that in courts. When you're in the court testifying, you're in the dock. Or if you're late for work, they're going to dock you. You need to look at the words and where all this stuff comes from. So when you're talking about the difference between the law of the sea and the law of the land is the people's culture on our land, but the law of the sea is money. So when you go into court, why do you have to go into court? Because the banks own the court. When you go into a court, you're going into a bank, and somebody's going to pay money. Courts are actually banks. And so by law, that's what you're doing. When you go into a court, you are actually entering into a bank. And so, who am I trying to say? There's so much I need to tell you about this stuff. So a bank, as I said, where do you find a bank? Well, you find a bank on both sides of a river. It's a river bank. It directs the flow, the cash flow, the liquid asset. And so when you go into a court, there's a fence and a gate in the court. The reason why there's a fence and a gate is because on one side, when you first walk in, where the people said, that is the law of the land, because everybody out there is on the land. So, but there's a gate and there's a fence. That gate in law is called a water gate. You've heard that term before. So the gate in the courtroom is called a water gate. A water gate is what you have in a canal, because like Panama Canal, where you came down your mother's birth canal. And so, when at the Panama Canal, when the ship is entering, it has to open up the water gate. The big gates open up, and the water fills up, and the ship rises. Then it closes, then another water gate opens, and it rises again. So the court has a gate, and it's called a water gate. Why? Because when you walk in, as I said, you are on the law of the land. The court has no jurisdiction over you whatsoever, as long as you sit on the outside. But when they call your name and you get up and you put your hand on the gate, there's a bar, there's a piece of wood across the top of that gate, and that's called a bar. And so you're not licensed to pass the bar. So when you put your hand on the gate and open the gate, you've opened yourself up to hot water. You're in maritime admiralty jurisdiction now. So now you're in hot water. And someone's going to have to bail you out. And so now you're in water. And so you need to understand how this stuff works, or how these words work. So everything is based on, and there's so much more I could tell you about the court. For instance, the judge sits on the bench. He rules from the bench. You'll always notice the benches are higher than you are. So you can look up to the law, and he can look down on you. And so a bench, we know that judges rule from a bench. Bench is a word in Latin. Look it up in a dictionary. Go to a dictionary, look up the word bench, and it would tell you the bench is a bank in the ancient world. The ancient world, and I've seen them because I've been all over the Middle East. When you're in Egypt and you go to the all those open air markets, people sit on the ground on pillows, and they have long benches in front of them where they're selling whatever they're selling. And if you want to buy something, you stoop down and pick up what you're buying, and you do business on the bench. And so in the ancient world, that was banking, right there on the bench. You're sitting right there in the marketplace in Egypt, and you're buying, you're buying dinner, or you're buying fruit or something. And so money is changing hands on the bench. And from that, the Latins called bench bank. And so today, when you're in a bank, you're actually dealing on the bench. And so that's why when the bank is looking for you, because you owed the bank some money, they put out a bench warrant. Because the bank wants to know where you are. The judge doesn't give a damn where you are. The bank wants you. You owe some money. And so if you can't pay the money, then you're in the hot water. And someone's going to have to bail you out. And if you can't be bailed out, then you yourself are 70 to 80% water, and you're a biological battery, so they will take you and put you in a cell. This is what you call a battery, is a cell. And you are a battery. You're a biological cell. You're a biological battery. You're 70% water. You're a maritime admiralty product. You came out of your mother's water, and you're in court, the bench. The bank owns you. It owns your body because the birth certificate is a certificate of manifest that goes directly to the Department of Commerce. So therefore, banking is actually based on your body, 70% water. Your body is the basis for all banking, all money. And so this is why we have ships, as I said, and ships always on the ocean. Well, you have airships and battleships and steamships. You have a spaceship. all kinds of different ships. And of course, if you're buying something big at Sears and you can't carry it home, they will ship it to you, because all big corporations have a shipping department. And so once you understand maritime admiralty, business, commerce, shipping, you're talking water, because there's only two things on the earth and water, the law of the land and the law of the sea. So that's why you're always in hot water. So all of this has to do with a ship. But remember, you also have something called an apprenticeship, authorship, censorship, championship, companionship, courtship, craftsmanship, dealership, dictatorship. How about fellowship and friendship, internship and listenership? How about marksmanship and membership? Ownership, partnership, rulership, scholarship, sponsorship, leadership, township, trusteeship, viewership, hardship, and worship. And don't forget that you're on the citizenship, mate, so don't rock the boat. Understand? Everything in government is based on shipping, money, water, you. You are a maritime admiralty product. So, once you begin to see how banks work, and then you will begin to understand the insurance companies which actually run the banks. Banks are pretty much backed up by and are the front for insurance companies. And all of that goes back, all that machinations of insurance companies and behind banks, that goes back to the 14th Amendment. That goes back to 1871. A long time ago, when insurance companies and corporations were being founded behind the scenes, and how the financial empires were being set up, and how all this stuff was being laid out and worked out for us. So, the whole idea of commerce, and again, I think I've sent you a document showing, look up the word commerce in a law dictionary. And you will find that the word commerce that you think means business, well, it is business. But in point of fact, the word commerce is the same, it means the same thing as the word Congress. So the United States has a Congress, and that does commerce, business. Well, Congress and commerce means sex. Sexual relationship is commerce, or Congress. There's Cores, and then there's Congress. And Congress means, in a law dictionary, sexual relationship. And so Congress and commerce. So the way this works is very simple. The corporations have decided what they were going to do. This is way back in the 1870s. Is that humans would become a business. They become a corporation. So they made all humans a company, a corporation, so that they could deal in commerce with you. A classic example is that when I see you with some woman and I say, I know that woman and she's bad company, and you tell me, mind your own business. And then I hear you're going to be marrying her and she's going to be your partner. And what are you talking about? Business, partner, mind your own business. She's bad company. Company, business, partner, commerce. So this is why when you're getting married, your mate is, your mate, well, it's a term that's used on board ship, your mate. And so the mate is a corporation. Every human body is a company. It may be bad company, good company, but it is a company, and it has stock, and that's why if your son is marrying into a wealthy family, we say the girl is of good stock. Yeah, I'm not marrying a cow, no, because she is stock. She's a corporation, and she just happens to be wealthy, so she's of good stock. And so she's movable. stock by law in a bank. Humans are movable stock. And so when you're getting married, you have to have a license. The reason why you have to have a license is because you are a corporation, and who you're marrying is a corporation. And so it's just business, like the mafia says. And so if you're going to do business, you've got to have a license. It's called a business license. And so you have to have a business license to do business. Now, at the business, the corporation, that's General Motors, has decided to do some special project with General Electric. Well, that's fine. If two corporations want to get together and produce a new product, that's fine, as long as you get permission, as long as you get the attorneys on both sides to work out the paperwork and who's going to own what and who gets what percentage and how much taxes will go to the government, and then when it's all worked out and the paperwork is all worked out, then they hand it into the Federal Trade Commission, and they'll check it out. Their lawyers will check it out, and if Ford's done their paperwork and General Electric's done theirs and everything looks fine, then you have now permission to go ahead with your new project. But whatever you produce, you have a partner, and that's the federal government, because they're the ones that gave you permission. So if they gave you permission, if you did it without their permission, of course, they wouldn't have nothing to say about it. But you didn't do it without their permission. You did it with their permission. They gave you a license to do something. So a license in law is a license is a permit to do something which without that permit would be unlawful. So it is not lawful for General Motors to do any business with GE or Sears or anybody else. In this world, it is not lawful for one corporation to do any business with another corporation without a license. So, but we're told, you don't have license to do that. And nobody gave you the license to do this. So a license is a permit to do something which without that permit is unlawful. So when you begin to see how you are a corporation and your wife is a corporation, so now you got two companies and they're going to produce a new product. Well, the government, which gave you the permit, they're also in on this piece of business. So anytime they want, they are partners. They are one-third partner. They can come in and take the child. They can come in and take the car. They can come in and take anything because they're partners to this agreement. I mean, we're just talking business now because you've got two corporations doing business, and I give you the license. So if I give you the license, count me in on whatever you do. Check with me first because I'm the one that gave you the license. And so as I said, when you begin to see that marriage is simply a business, and if it doesn't work out, you're not going to God, you're going to court. Bring your house, your car, and your money. We're just talking business now. And so when you have children, it's it all sounds very nice, but in point of fact, the child is simply a human product from two corporations. It's a living product, and therefore it can be bought and sold on the stock market. You need to understand that your body is a security on the New York stock market. And what you also need to know is how the world works, and how the banks work, and how how things work in this world. Because knowledge, people today have no real power. They don't know how to do anything. They know something's wrong. They know all this corruption is overwhelming in your face, but there's nothing they can do about it. And the reason why is very simple, because they have no power to do anything about it. And the reason you have no power is because knowledge is power. And if you don't understand what's going on, then you have no power to do anything about it, because you don't even know what's going on. You have no idea how things work. So therefore, you have to just sit here, watch the world go by, and never realize for a moment how this stuff works. It's all based on water. It's all based on sex. It's all based on you being 70% water. It's all based on maritime admiralty and shipping. And like I said, and you're on the citizen ship, so don't rock the boat. And as long as you understand that, mate, you're going to do just fine. So then when you begin to see how all of this is connected to religion, it all goes back to the church. It all goes back to the 8th and 9th and 10th century A.D. with the Knights in the Vatican. All of this stuff can be traced back to business thousands of years ago. And that's a whole story in itself. When you start figuring out how the corporations work in the United States, there's a world of difference between the United States and the United States of America. Doesn't mean the same thing at all. As a matter of fact, I've asked so many people, how many states are there in the Union, in the American Union? Well, most people will tell you there's 50 states. Those people who are even smart enough to know there's 50 states. But in point of fact, no, there is actually 100 states, and it very well might be 101 states in the federal union. But we know there is at least 100 states in our federal union. Why? Because every state, including Alaska and Hawaii, every state is 2 states, not 1. So in California, you have something called California State. Or in New York, you have New York State. Or in Florida, you have Florida State. Florida State, New Mexico State is the country, is the state itself. So California State, I live in Los Angeles, California State is the land called California. The land itself is called California. It's called California State. However, there is a state of California. That doesn't mean the same thing at all. State of does not mean California. It's a state of, like Virginia and the state of Virginia, or New York State, or the state of New York. No, state of is not the state at all. The word state of in international law means the federal corporation. We call it the United States federal government. The federal government in your state operates within the boundaries of your state, so it is a government also. There's a federal government in California, and there's a state government in California. And so one is called, the state government is Cal State. The federal government is called State of California. So there's 2 different operations here. So therefore you have to know which one of the courtrooms you're going in. Because, do you need a lawyer or an attorney? And are you going to have a trial by jury or a jury trial? Doesn't mean the same thing at all. A trial by jury is one thing, but a jury trial is totally different. And so people out there on the streets just do not understand how the world works. It's all based on words, on the words in terms in banking and law and government, how these words are developed and used, and all of this stuff can be traced back. All of this stuff on maritime admiralty, laws, commerce, sex, drugs, rock and roll, all of this stuff can be traced back to the early Middle Ages. So I'm saying at least the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th century A.D., when the church, the Vatican, now we get into the basis for all of this shenanigans, all this stuff, is traceable back into Europe, because after all, that's where we've come from, is Europe. And so what we call the Caucasian or white man, his home area on the earth is Europe. It's north, east, west, and south of Europe, which is incidentally where we get our word news, N-E-W-S. News is north, east, west, and south. So anything that happens in the north, east, west, or south is news. But if you go back to Europe, where the white man, what we call the white man, comes from, Europe, in the ancient world, because all roads lead to Rome. So in the ancient world, there was already, before the Roman Empire even existed, there was already an establishment of governmental systems among the peoples. There was already, lawyers and judges and priests and holy ones and doctors and all kinds of, professional people, even before the Roman Empire even existed in Europe. So that system that was in Europe was a very ancient system based on the Middle East. It was actually based on Phoenicia, Cana, Syria, Lebanon, that ancient times, those ancient cultures impacted Europe, and that's a whole story of how it happened. But the point being is that the ancient Europe was already had a governmental system, and the system was called Druids. The people were called Druids, and the Druids were the doctors, the lawyers, the medical, the teachers, etc., all of it. Whatever it were, anybody who was in charge of something in Europe, they were Druids. And one of the most important symbols of power in the Druidic system was a magic wand. And like the orchestra leaders today wave the magic wand, and everybody plays to the boss's tune. You don't play on your own. You watch him. He's the one that tells you what you can do. So he's waving a magic wand with his magic, and he's the boss. Well, it's the same magic wand that Merlin the magician waves, and so magic wands were Celtic Druid symbols of power. Well, I've talked about this before. Magic wands were always made out of the wood of a holly tree. It was made out of hollywood. And today, they're still working their magic on the world in Hollywood, because the wood of the holly tree was what the magic wands were made from. So it's the magic of Hollywood, the magic of Washington, D.C., the magic of corporations and money and maritime admiralty law and the law of shipping, and it just goes on and on and on. But there is an entire world system built up over the past 2,000 years, and remember, for at least 2,300 years, and this is important, for at least 2,300 years, Rome has dominated Europe. First of all, with the coming of the Roman Empire, and finally with the dissolving of the Roman Empire when it became a democracy. It started off as a republic and became very powerful, and then it became known as a democracy, and for the democracy it collapsed completely, because all democracies always collapse. That's history. They always have collapsed. Anytime you have a democracy, it's the worst kind of form of government you can possibly have. But it sounds good. Intellectually, it's horrible. But anyway, so for 2,300 years, Rome, under the Caesars in the beginning, and for the last 1,600 years, under the Vatican, Rome has dominated Europe. And Europe has dominated the planet. For 2,300 years, Rome's dominated Europe, and Europe dominates the world. And that's why today all roads lead to Rome. Washington, D.C. is laid out by the Jesuits. It's a Catholic operation in Washington, D.C. The entire Washington, D.C. government is a Vatican operation. Happily, we don't know that, so it doesn't bother us. But anyone who's done their homework understands what I'm talking about. In the ancient Roman Empire, the seat of power for Caesar in Rome, where did Caesar actually rule Rome and his empire from? He ruled it from a place in Rome called Capitol Hill. In Latin, it was called Capitoline Hill. Look it up in the dictionary. Look up the word Capitoline Hill, and it will tell you that is the seat of power where Caesar ruled the empire. And it was said in all the history books that Caesar, quote, went up on the hill. And every morning he went up on the hill. Well, we say that today. That up on the hill today, they passed this law in the Senate, the Roman Senate. So the Senate up on the hill today did this and that. And up on the hill, it's Vatican Hill, the Senate, Capitol Hill. The Roman Catholic Church runs America, period. It's called Jesuit. It's called secret societies, propaganda due. It's called the Black Hand. It's called secret societies and fraternal orders, hidden in plain sight. And this is why religion is condemned in America and mocked, and all kinds of religions, and people are put down by being religious, and most of them need to be put down because they're fruitcakes. But when the Holy Father comes here, the president, the vice president, and everybody in town comes out to bow down to kiss his ring. Everybody kisses his ring. Communist, Nazi, fascist, murderer, mafia, Michael Corleone, it doesn't matter. Everybody kneels before the Pope. Why? Because the Pope owns Washington, D.C., and is controlling maritime admiralty law, the law of water. He owns your courts. He owns your body. The Vatican owns this country. It controls this country. It tells you that the Jews are doing this and the Jews are doing that. No, it's the Vatican. Rome, for 2,300 years, has dominated Europe, and Europe has dominated the world, and it's all maritime admiralty, and that's where the Pope sits, is on the Holy See. You need to wake up and find out how this country really works and how it's set up in Washington, D.C., because it's a totally different. There are two totally different and distinctively different governments in America. One is called the United States, and one's called the United States of America. Now, who the hell has ever heard anything about that? Well, it's true. And so, when you understand, you could go on for hours putting these pieces together. That the Federal Reserve, who prints the money, and the Internal Revenue. Why is it called Internal Revenue? It's because there's a corporation, and the corporation is called United States. It's a corporation. It's a company. United States is a company. It's what is called there's a specific word for it. I'll think of it in a minute. But it is a corporation, just like Sears, like General Electric and General Motors. There's a corporation. It's called United States Corporation. And if you are a worker, if you're an employee of that corporation, you're referred to as a citizen of the corporation. The corporation is called United States, so therefore you are a United States citizen. But you're not an American. You're a member of a corporation, a municipal corporation founded in 1871 and incorporated in Delaware. It's a Roman corporation. We call it the United States Federal Government. No, it's a Roman religious trust. First of all, founded in England, and then from England, the trust was then granted to the United States Corporation. So we are an actual corporation. United States is a corporation under the British, the Queen Mum, and the Holy of Holies in England, British royalty. We are nothing more than their employees, and our bodies are security on the New York Stock Exchange for the corporation, and the banks direct the flow of the currency, because your money is the cash flow, the liquid asset. So, my And the other thing that I guess we should say about this is that it doesn't necessarily mean this is all bad, because the Americans live pretty high on the hog. You know, we live pretty good, driving new cars and eating steak dinners and watching television and flying around in jets. So we live pretty good because of this system. I'm not complaining about the system. I'm trying to explain it so that you understand. I've said to you before, and I'll say it again, if you have a 2-story building and you're going to put a lot of weight on the second floor, like automobiles or printing presses or something, you're going to put a lot of weight on the second floor. The first thing you should do is go downstairs with a building inspector and get on a ladder and go up through the ceiling tiles on the first floor and look at the foundation of the floor you're going to build on before you put that weight on it, because it may not want to hold that kind of weight. So therefore, what are you doing? You're standing under the foundation you're going to build on, and that's where we get understanding, because you're standing under the subject. And so before you go building your whole life and your business and your home and building your whole life on something you don't understand, you need to realize the Pope runs America, period. He also owns England. But that's not, that's for another subject we're not supposed to talk about in public. So the papacy not only is the Godfather, because the Pope represents God, and he is the Holy Father. So that's where the mafia gets the idea of the Godfather. Godfather is actually the Pope. La Cosa Nostra, our thing. And so when you understand the Pope and the Black Pope, which is the Jesuits, they came up with the idea of the corporation. And the corporation operates out of Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia. So anyway, that and $2 will get you a cup of coffee. People do not realize how America works, how the banks work, and that you are already, when you were born, you are a slave. As long as you understand that, then you're on then you're not supposed to make any waves because you're on the citizenship. And so your body is a maritime admiralty product. You came out of your mother's water. And that's why, incidentally, Christianity is involved in all of this. If you're going to be born again, you have to go back into your mother's water, because that's where you were born to start with. So you have to go back into your mother's water to be born again. Well, how do you do that? Well, Mother Earth and Mother Nature gave birth to you. You're a creature of the earth. So go back out and find somebody who will go with you, and they will put you in the lake and dump you in the lake, and now you've been baptized. Now, baptism is going back into your mother's water, Mother Earth, Mother Nature, and now you come out of your mother's water, you break out, and now you're brand new. You are now born again. And so it all has to do with religion. It all has to do with occult secrets of the Catholic Church, the Roman Church, the Vatican, the Vatican's connections to something that you've never heard of called Propaganda Due. You need to look into Propaganda Due and Opus Dei and P2 Lodge operating inside the Vatican, what it is. Go on the web and type in P2 Lodge in the Vatican, and you will find that's some very interesting stuff, and then you begin to look about how America was founded. That area, and of course, if you are, let me bring this out too, if you are illegal in this country, you come across the border illegally. Well, and when you come into California, if you're looking to make money, you're coming across illegally, I don't care where you come from. I'm just saying Mexico, probably just many come from Canada, but if you come into this country illegally, you are undocumented worker. The corporation called United States, which is in Washington, D.C., it doesn't give a damn about you being illegal here. Illegals, they couldn't care less if they tried to. The corporation called United States in Washington, D.C. doesn't give a damn about how many people come here. What they care about, and this is what nobody seems to understand, I hear all the stuff about, what's going on with the states and the people coming in, illegals and all that kind of thing. But nobody seems to realize the corporation called United States doesn't care. What they care about is undocumented workers. That's what they care about, undocumented. Why? Because when your body is a security on the New York Stock Exchange. And so if they can document you, now you are worth money to the corporation called United States Company Corporation. And they can get loans from international banks in Switzerland and Hong Kong and wherever else. And so anytime if you wanted to prove this, go get your original birth certificate and look on the back of your original birth certificate. You will see the birth certificate's been all over the world, stamped by all kinds of banks all over the earth, from China to Hong Kong to Malaysia to Russia. Your birth certificate goes all over the world, being stamped on the back by the banks that are using your body as a security on the stock exchange. So, and so the point being is that if you come into this country, which is run by a corporation, and you come in illegally, the corporation, if you're making money here, the corporation can put a lien on you. It's called a mechanic's lien. And a mechanic's lien can be put on you because you're coming in and making money with the corporation and you're not a member. So they put a lien on you, and therefore you become known as an alien. A lien has been put on you. Not alien, no, a lien is on you. So you are an alien. So, as I said, it's an extraordinary story of how the world really works. It's just like the movie many years ago. What was it called? Network, where Ned Beatty, the president and chairman of the board of the network, told the old newsman in the movie, he says, "Mr. Beale, the world is a business. It's a corporation. All companies, all countries are corporations. And as I told you, it's all a business. All the world is a business. Well, I told you that you are a corporation. Well, and I told you also that there are two different states, state of California and California state. What I forgot to tell you is that there's two of you. There's two different you. There is the personal you, the one your mother and father brought into the world, and then there's the you that operates in business. So if you owe me $1,000 and you won't pay me, I cannot, according to maritime law, I cannot come over and touch you or harm you and your family physically. I go to jail for that. But I can touch you in court, legally. Why? Because, well, you are a legal entity. I can, because you're a corporation, I can sue a corporation. So I can sue you in business. But I can't touch you. I can't go to your home and harm you or touch you. But I can touch you in court because you're a corporation. Well, so am I. And so you are a corporation. I'm a corporation. There's a whole story behind that and how that works. I got off the train of thought on that one. I'll come back to it in a minute. So the point being is that you are a company, and this is why, incidentally, when you buy a new car, you will get with that new car, you get something called a operator's manual. And the operator's manual simply does what it says. It tells you how to operate the vehicle. And since you are operating a vehicle, you need to know when to change the oil and how they treat the car. or whatever it is you buy. You get an operator's manual. However, if you're buying the car, the motorcycle, the 16-wheeler, whatever it is you're buying that has wheels, you're buying something to operate. But if you're buying something to operate that has wheels for business, if you're buying the car for yourself, it's called an operator's manual. You're an operator. But if you're buying the car for business, you're going to use it as a taxi, say, for instance. Well, that's different. Now it's business. So now you have to have a license because you're doing business. So therefore, you have to, you are an operator. But now you're not an operator. You're using it to make money. So now it's a business, and so in maritime admiralty law, if you're using wheels, and I don't care how big or small they are, if it's on wheels and you're using it to make money, then the law says you're no longer an operator, you are a driver. That's why you have the bus driver, a truck driver. So you have a cab driver. The word driver means you're using the wheels to make money. Therefore, you have to have a driver's license. So your license is to do business in the car. And so, but if you're an operator, so there's a world of difference between the two. But nobody knows, nobody cares. Not important. It hasn't got anything to do with football or basketball or Paris Hilton or anything like that. So it's not really important. None of this is important unless and until it finally dawns on you that there's something going on the earth that you don't understand, and that all you know is that you're getting the bad side of the deal every time. Why? Because knowledge is power, and you have no knowledge. That's why you have no power. And there's a scripture in the Bible that says, "My people are dying from a lack of knowledge." And my God, that's true. There's another scripture which I consider to be the most important scripture I've ever read in the Bible. It says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." That's in the book of Ecclesiastes, I think. Where there is no vision, the people perish. My God, that is the exact truth. Because if you have no vision, and this is what America is why America is like it is today. The people of America, like the people of the world, but especially my interest in my own country, the people of America have no vision, meaning they're walking blind. They have no idea how a bank works. They have no idea who controls Washington, D.C. and the Vatican. They have no comprehension of how international trade and maritime admiralty law works. They don't know anything about the two different states, one being federal and one being state and one being federal. They don't know that there's another state connected to our republic. It's called Israel. It's called the state of Israel, like the state of Alabama, and the state of Florida, and the state of New York, where we have the state of Israel. And it's part of our federal establishment. Well, nobody knows that. So when you look at Israel as if it were Hawaii or Alaska, because it's connected to us by law, maritime admiralty law. It is connected to us, period. You just didn't know it. And so when you see how laws work and realize that all of our laws and institutions and education and banking and insurance, especially schools and churches, all of this can be traced back to the old Phoenician, Canaanite, Sumerian systems in the ancient world, from which the Greeks went into the ancient world of Egypt and Middle East, and then brought it back to Rome, and Rome brought it into Europe, and Europe brought it into America, and all of this stuff can be traced back thousands of years to the symbols and emblems and words and terms. And Americans, for the most part, we're not interested, and we have no idea in the world how any of this stuff works. But there is There are a few people who are waking up, but I always say that the light at the end of the tunnel is a train coming. Because the problem is that even if the people wake up, it's way too late. I will guarantee you that. I've been studying something for 53 years, and you can take my word for it. It is way too late. America should have woke up a long time ago, back in the 1870s. We should have woke up in 1900. But people didn't know how the stuff was being put together. People didn't know how this was. We've been taught. We go to school and learn what to kiss and when. We're never taught about anything about government in school. They don't teach their children where money comes from. So when Caesar went up on Capitol Hill each morning to officiate over the Senate, well, like I said, we say, well, Caesar's up on the hill today. Well, that's what we got. We got a corporation, and obviously all corporations have to have a president. And all corporations have to have a vice president and secretary treasurer. That's corporate law. If you've got a corporation, anybody can have a corporation. But if you're going to have one, three things you got to have, which is the law. You got to have a president. So today we got a president of the corporation. Everybody thinks he's the president of America. No, go back and do some homework. He's the president of a company, a corporation, like Sears, like General Motors, and you work for the company. Remember, you got a Social Security card. You work for the corporation. You're a U.S. citizen. You're not an American. The law. If you actually go to the law book, go to the law library and look this up, you will find that it says in law that a U.S. citizen does not have any access to the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, period. So if you think you have protection from the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, don't go into court and tell the judge that you're a U.S. citizen and you're protected by the Constitution, because you didn't read. There's a world of difference between a U.S. citizen and an American. Not the same words at all. A U.S. citizen is an employee of a privately owned company, and you don't have any protections. The same thing is true. It's obviously true if you're going to work for Sears. You don't tell the management at Sears what time you're going to get in and what time you decide to take lunch and what you will do in there, what you don't want to do, what you're not going to do. They tell you. You work for them. They don't work for you. And so, therefore, you can't tell anybody what you're going to do. And so, because you work for the corporation, you are an international maritime admiralty product, a movable property. So, I don't know if any of this makes any sense, but there's a whole lot more. My interest in this has little to do with government and finance and money. And more incidentally, the word money comes from a temple that was on the hill that Caesar went up on to each morning, Capitol Hill. Well, in the ancient Roman Empire, there was a temple up on the hill by the Senate, and Caesar was required to go into the temple before he could go in before the Senate. And the temple was devoted to a goddess named Juno, like Juneau, Alaska, Juno Moneta. And Juno Moneta is where the Roman Senate coined their coins. This is where they had the press to print their money and coin the coins of Rome, was in the temple of Juno Moneta, from which we get our word money, moneta. And so therefore, it's still the same thing today. Caesar, when he goes up on the hill, has to go to the bank first and talk to the Federal Reserve first before you go doing anything. Because you may be the president of the corporation, but the company that actually finances the corporation, there's where the money is. And so you better go check with Rome. You better go check with the Holy Father, and how this stuff really works. So if you can claim that you can run America and you're going to do this and you're going to do that, well, you can do anything you want as long as you pass it by the bank first. And so whoever prints the money, that's the old golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. And so the Federal Reserve is actually based on a far more ancient system coming out of Rome, coming out of the Vatican, where you have the up on the hill, the Senate, Juno Moneta, the bank, the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve is actually called the temple. Incidentally, I don't know if you know this or not, but the Federal Reserve and the Internal Revenue, the Internal Revenue and the Federal Reserve are both home office. Do you know where the home office for the Internal Revenue and Federal Reserve is? It's in Puerto Rico. In Puerto Rico. I went, nobody's ever stopped to wonder, why is the Federal Reserve and Internal Revenue home office in Puerto Rico? Does that have anything to do with the Pirates of the Caribbean? So just understand that you don't understand fully how the world works. And I'm not saying it's all evil and bad. I'm just saying you don't know how this world works. The United States of America and it, the whole system and the corporation, etc., as I said, can be traced back to Rome. But that, even from that point, can be traced back to India, because there's a very definite connection between the Rome and the British East India Company, which was a huge corporation set up by the Queen back in the early 1800s. So the Vatican and the Queen and the British East India Company, and then the coming of the corporation calling the 13 colonies. And why were there 13 colonies? Well, it has to do with the number 13 is perfect government. Perfect government was always understood in the ancient world. The number 13 was connected to perfect government. Why? Because it represented Jesus and his chosen 12. Jesus and the 12 apostles made perfect government. Why? Because it represents the Vatican. The Vatican represents Christianity. Christianity is sun worship. So the sun with the 12 apostles, no, not 12 apostles, 12 signs of the zodiac. Jesus is referred to as God's Son, the light of the world. Well, of course the sun is the light of the world. Well, he is our risen Savior. Of course the sun is your risen Savior. It rises every morning. And it is your Savior. If it don't come up, you're dead in 3 weeks. So Christianity is actually sun worship, of which the Pope is the head of the sun cult on the earth. And since he is the head of the sun cult, it can be traced back to ancient Rome, back to Britannia, can go all the way back into the Hindu, going back into the ancient Hindu sun worship. Christianity is sun worship. Judaism is the worship of many gods. Jews worship many gods. That's a whole story. When you get into theology and religion, that's what I've spent 53 years on. You find out that Judaism over the years has worshipped many different gods. Right now they're currently worshiping the planet Saturn, and they still have some of the old lunar moon worship in it too. They worship the moon at one time, and then they worship the planet Saturn another time, and then there was another time when they were worshiping Jupiter. And so when you start doing the research on where the religions come from, that's a whole story in itself. But again, perfect government is 13. Jesus and his 12. Well, Jesus represents the sun. He's referred to, as I said, God's Son, the light of the world. Of course, the sun is the light of the world, and he did have 12 followers. It's the 12 signs of the zodiac and the 12 months of the year. And the sun represents light. And so he was the light of the world. And so in the ancient Egyptian system, one of the ancient Egyptian systems of religion, the sun was called Horus, Horus. Horus was the name of an Egyptian sun god. And it was said that Horus walked across the sky in 12 steps. And it was a 12-step program. That's why alcoholics get a 12-step program. And you have a 12-step program. You start in the first grade and you end in the 12th. So it's a 12-step program, just like Horus. Horus walked across the sky in 12 steps. When it came up in the morning, it was called Horus of the first step. A little bit later, he was Horus of the second step, then Horus of the third, of the fourth, and of the fifth. And when it got directly overhead, so that there was no shadow on the pyramid, directly overhead, Horus became known as the Most High, because it don't get any higher than high noon. So Horus was now the Most High God, because it don't get any higher than 12 noon. So therefore, God's Son was in the temple. God's temple is the heavens. So he was in the temple at 12, teaching the wise men, not 12 years old, 12 noon. And then he is going to die. So now he's walking across the sky, and he's going to ultimately confront his evil brother. His evil brother was called Set in Egypt. And he was Set was referred to as the god of darkness. He was referred to as the prince of darkness. And of course it does get dark at sunset. So he walks across the sky in 12 steps. Well, if you're going to personify light, light in Latin is Lucius, means the coming of light, or light, Lucius. But if you're going to make Lucius into an actual human, or into a person, the name Lucius is Luke. So that's why you have Luke Skywalker. And Luke Skywalker walks across the sky and confronts his evil brother, Set, the prince of darkness, at sunset. And Horus was spelled Horus. We turn around and change the U on the U and the R and make it 12 hours. Hours, not Horus. So the 12 hours is the 12 Horuses, walks across the sky, confronts the evil brother, the prince of darkness. So you take the word evil, E-V-I-L, and put a D in front of it, becomes devil. And the root word for good, it gives us God. So take an O out of good, becomes God. God is good and the devil is evil. It's just words that the Vatican has dreamt up, like they dreamt up the Federal Reserve, the Washington, D.C., the corporation, like the Vatican has dreamt up all the other machinations around the world and around the planet, from England to Asia to Africa to all over the earth to Russia. The Vatican has flooded the world with BS, lies, deception, tricks, words, terms, symbols, emblems, national coats of arms, harlotry, corporate logos. My God, this thing is big. This goes back thousands of years in business, corporation, religions, governments, education. It's an incredible story of betrayal of the whole human family. But it works, and happily, nobody on the earth seems to give a damn. As long as the beer's cold and the Dodgers are playing, who the hell cares? Everything's fine. We got a new car. We're eating hamburgers and driving new cars and watching TV, and we go to the baseball game. And after all, we all want to be on the team. We're all team players, you know. So people like Jordan Maxwell, I just go along to get along and do the best I can to try and wake up my fellow man, knowing full well I'm not stupid. No, I'm far from it. I'm not the world's wisest man, but I'm not stupid. I know. I don't suspect. I know that 90% of the people hearing me have no idea in the world what I'm talking about, and trying to help my fellow man and help get America out of the mess it's in is like trying to empty the Pacific with a teacup. It's not going to happen. I know that. There are certain people who do appreciate my work and my name and who I am and what I'm doing, but most people hearing me have no comprehension on the earth of what I'm talking about. It hasn't got anything to do with Paris Hilton or football or basketball or anything of any importance. And so I know, I just hope that whoever is supposed to hear me will, and whoever is not supposed to hear me, I know won't. So I just do what I do and see where it goes. But I can tell you one thing you really need to start looking at. You need to start looking at authority, because the word authority comes from the word author. So that's why you have to have a license if you're going to be a lawyer. If you're going to be a lawyer, you need a license. Why? Simple. Because you're going to be making money. And if you're going to be making money, I don't care what you're doing, but if you're going to be making money, you need a business license. And how are you going to make money as a lawyer? Well, you're going to read law books, and then you're going to apply what's in those law books to your client. So therefore, your real money is coming from your knowledge of law books. That's where your knowledge comes from, and that's where your money is coming from, because you know something that your client doesn't. So that's why you are the lawyer and he isn't. And so if you're a lawyer and you're making money, then you've got to have a license. Why? Because those books that you're reading, you didn't write. You're only reading them, and now you're going to make money from them, but you didn't write those books. Well, if I wrote a book about, if I wrote a book and you take it and you're going to make a movie out of it and you don't call me, I don't think so. My attorney will be talking to you real quick. If you're going to take my work and my book and make a movie, a television show out of it without talking to me, no, you better talk to me first and pay me up front in cash, and I will give you a license to use my book to make money. Well, that's what the corporation in Washington D.C. is doing. It gives the lawyer a license to make money, as long as he gets a license, because he's using somebody else's book. So
wow.
Anyway,
this is extraordinary, Jordan. It's I'm glad you brought that up. With the lawyer and the attorney, because you said something earlier in the broadcast that there's a difference between a lawyer and an attorney. Please expound on that.
Well, I can't do it because I'm not a lawyer. I'm not heavily involved in that. I just know there is, and so. But there are a lot of documents out there, and you can go on the web and tap into that. It has something to do with the British, what we call British, accredited registry. Something to do with the British Accredited Registry, BAR, so you pass the bar. And all lawyers in America work for the Queen of England. All courts are in. Something else that a lot of people don't know is that all law, all crime, I should say, this is the point I wanted to make, all crime, I don't care how big the crime is or how small it is, from stealing bubblegum to murder, it doesn't matter. If it's a crime, it's considered in a court as commerce. Did you know that? All crime is commerce. It's business. So if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. It's business. So what goes around comes around. You got to pay your debt to society. And so when you commit a crime, you got to pay. That's why when you walk into Sears and you want to buy a pair of shoes or a suit, they're going to give you a ticket. And you're going to sign the ticket, and they're expecting you to pay the ticket. And so the same thing when a cop pulls you over and he's giving you a ticket, the cop is giving you a ticket, and he's expecting you to pay it. And so you sign the ticket, and now that ticket now is known in law as a ticket in commerce. But what you need to remember is that you were the co-signer of a ticket in commerce. Not the signer. He signed it. You co-signed it. That's interesting. You need to do some homework on co-signing for anybody, what it means to co-sign on a ticket. So if you go into Sears, you've got to sign a ticket and you're expected to pay it. Well, the same thing with a cop. He gives you a ticket and you're expected to pay it. And so why? As well, because you put it on your card, so they charged it. Well, so when you go into court, they're going to charge you with doing this. They're going to charge you with doing that. So you've been charged with doing this, and you've been charged with doing that. And then you ask them, well, how much is the charge? Well, it's going to be $500. That's the charge. Well, how much is the suit? $200. Well, that's what they're expecting you to pay because you've been charged. So, when in a court, the judge walks in. He walks in with a black robe. I've talked about this before. Judge wear a black robe. Why? Because the black robe represents something. That's why Darth Vader and Catholic priest and Dracula and and judges and and people when they're graduating from high school and college, they wear black robes. And they wear a square mortarboard on their head. And then the kids that dropped out of school, they call them squares. You're a bunch of squares. Why? Because you're wearing a square mortarboard on your head. And the square that you're wearing on your head, what used to be black, can be purple and red, but depends on the university. But the square you're wearing on your head is connected to the god Saturn. That's a whole nother subject. When you get into the symbolism of the planet Saturn, which was the Jewish god, which is still the Jewish god today. The planet Saturn is Yahweh, Jehovah. Yahweh are the Hebrew god today. So all Jews today, whether they know it or not, it's an encyclopedia. Go look it up in a dictionary, and it will tell you. And it's not a big hidden secret. My God, anybody can read a dictionary if you can read it all. Go get a dictionary and look up the word Saturn, planet, and it will tell you Saturn is the god of the Jews. So he's referred to as Yahweh or Jehovah, or the ineffable name or whatever, but it's actually the planet Saturn. And Saturn in the old Phoenician Canaanite system, in the ancient world, Saturn was called Shabbat. Shabbath, Shabbat. Shabbat was Saturn to the Phoenicians and the ancient peoples of the ancient world. So if you were worshiping Saturn, the planet, you were worshiping Shabbat. And therefore, once a week when you worship your God, we call it the Sabbath. The Sabbath is the worship of Shabbat, and Shabbat is the planet Saturn. That's why Jews go to Sabbath on Saturn's day. Friday night, Saturday night is Saturn's day, or Saturday. So the Jews go to Temp El. El. El was the name of Saturn and the old Phoenician Canaanite system. The ancient, before El, there was the name before it became the name of known as El was Shabbat. But when the Hebrew system, Shabbat becomes known as El. E-L. El is God in Hebrew. And El is Saturn. Look it up in the dictionary. So that's why today Jews still worship their gods Saturn on Saturn Day. Saturn was also referred to as the inhibitor. Anything that holds you back and inhibits you, inhibitor. Like, for instance, mafia, police department, judges, courts, law, government. Those are Saturnian terms and words because they all imply they can hold you back, put you in jail, lock you up. Well, that's what Saturn was known as, the god of the god inhibitor. He holds you back. So the Hebrews said, well, if that's true, that God is the inhibitor, our God is Saturn, and we worship him on Saturn's day, and he was called Shabbat, but we call it Sabbath. And so we're worshiping Saturn, and he's the inhibitor who will hold you back. Why don't we just do nothing? This way he doesn't have to hold us back on anything. We ain't doing nothing. And so that's why the Jews do nothing on Sabbath, because he's the inhibitor who holds you back and teaches you a lesson. So therefore the Jews don't do nothing on Saturday. So rather than fighting Saturn, forget it. We just don't do nothing. If he's going to hold you back, he can't hold you back because you're not doing anything. That's why the Jews do nothing on Sabbath or Shabbat, Saturn's day. So, and then there's so much to be known about religion, about the prophets, about the Bible, about government, about commerce, about banks, about you, where you came from, where you're going when you leave here. How many people know have ever thought about that? Where are you going when you die? And there will come a day when you're going to leave here. Where are you going? Well, problem is you don't even know where you came from. And you damn sure have no idea about what you're doing here while you're here. So since you don't know where you came from, you don't know what you're doing while you're here, I know you don't know where you're going. So all I'm trying to do is just trying to awaken my fellow man to how the world really works. It does not work the way you think it does. Nothing is what you think it is. Nothing.
You said something.
The Arabic people do not worship God. They worship Allah, which is a moon god of the ancient Arabic peoples. A moon god. Well, that's okay. Christians worship a sun god. Jesus is called God's son, the light of the world. He is our risen Savior. Get it? And the Jews are worshiping the planet Saturn, and Saturn was referred to as Lord of the Rings. And so the Jews in Hollywood are still making movies about their god called Lord of the Rings. Well, of course, Saturn was Lord of the Rings. And the Jewish women were told to listen to their god, so they wear an ear ring. And men were to get married before their god, so they wear a wedding ring. Because Saturn, the god of the Jews, was Lord of the Rings. So anyway, that and $2 will get you a cup of coffee. Most people have no idea what I'm talking about, and it has nothing to do with football, so I wouldn't worry about it. Unless you're concerned about what's going on in this world and where you're going and what's happening to your country, what's happening to you and what's happening to your children and what's getting ready to happen to you and your children, you have no idea in the world what the Vatican has cooked up for you. What? You have no idea in the world what a pope is. The word pope comes from papa. Papa is a door. So the pope represents a door. And you can't open the door without a hinge. And in Latin, a hinge is cardinal. This is why the Pope has a cardinals, because they are the hinges. That's why you have a cardinal point on the map and a cardinal point in astrology, and you have a cardinal point on the map. Cardinal means a hinge. You start here and you go from here to there, but you always come back to the hinge. Well, that's why the Pope has a cardinal. And he is Papa, the door. And what does that mean? He's the door to the Phoenician Canaanite god, Dagon, D-A-G-O-N. That's why he wears the papal mitre. That strange-looking hat the Pope wears is a fish head. It's the representation of the god of the Roman Catholic Church, which is Dagon. It's spelled D-A-G-O-N. Dagon, the fish god. He was referred to by the Hebrews as Anis. Many people will know the Dagon by Anis. Anis or Dagon was a fish god. That's why Jesus feeds his people with 2 fish. It has to do with the sea, the Holy See, money, the cash flow. It's just an incredible. And the problem I have is trying to relate any of this to the world I live in, because there's so much of it I haven't even begun to tell you. So much that you need to see with your own eyes to understand the symbols and the words, the terms, and who police are. Why do we have police? It's because back in 1871, when the United States of America as a republic was done away with after the Civil War, they replaced the United States of America Republic with a corporation, as I told you. It's called the United States Corporation, incorporated in Delaware back in 1871 as a privately owned company. Well, corporations, if you work for the corporations, for instance, if you go to work for Sears, and Sears tells you what to do and what you can't do, you cannot tell Sears management, look, I have constitutional rights and you can't tell me what to do. No, they're not. What they're telling you is not the law. They're not giving you God's law. They're not telling you constitutional law. They're just telling you what their policies are. And their policy is if they hire you, you come in at 7 and you go home at 4. That's just their policy. If you don't like it, then take a walk. It's not the law of the land. It's not God's law. It's Sears' law. Well, Sears don't have a law. Well, then it's a policy. Okay, it's a Sears policy. And so that's why the corporation called United States has their policies. and therefore they have to have a politician to decide what the policy will be, and it's backed up by police. Police back up the policy of the politicians from the corporation, 1871, that's owned by the Vatican. Wake up and find out how the world works. So anyway, is any of this getting through to anybody, or does anybody understand what I'm talking about? This is a strange world we live in. And people have no idea in the world how this stuff really works. And I will guarantee you one thing, I haven't even scraped the surface.
Oh, believe me, we know, because you said something earlier, Jordan, that, I mean, as you're sitting here teaching us, my friend, it really got my spider senses to tingling. When you broke down the difference between a democratic government and a republic, a republic government. I mean, well, yeah. Look at the two major parties that we have right now, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And I think what happened here, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that many Americans were duped into the Democratic Party. And what does a democratic government do? It's not good. Whereas a Republican government, if you will, would be far more better. Did I put that?
Yeah. If you go back to the 16 and 1700s and the way they understood the word Republican back then, but that was 400 years ago. But today, Democrat and Republican are it all has to do with symbolism, occult symbolism. And first of all, on the back of the $1 bill, you'll see the eagle has two wings. It doesn't have 6 wings. It only has 2. It has 2 wings, a left wing and a right wing. And that's why you only have 2 kinds of parties here. You have a left wing and right wing. The right wing are called Republicans, and we call it. The left wing politicians are Democrats, and the right wing are Republicans. So we have left wing and right wing. Well, that's why. It's only because that's what an eagle has, only 2 wings. But it has, if you look on the bottom of the eagle on the American dollar bill, you will see 9 tail feathers. 9 tail feathers, that stands for the Council of 9. And the secret societies of Rome, they have something called the Council of 9. And that's why the bird, the eagle, has 9 tail feathers. And look on the back of the dollar bill over the American eagle, and you'll see 13 stars. And they're all together, all 13 stars. Most people look at it and have no idea in the world what they're looking at. It's right there in your face. Then you can rub it in your face. It's right there. Look at it. Put your glasses on and look at the back of the dollar bill. And above the eagle, which has a left and right wing, above the eagle is a set of stars. There are 13 of them. Why 13? Well, and they'll say, well, that has to do with the 13 colonies. No, it has nothing to do with 13 colonies. There are 13 stars. Look at them and tell me, what do they make up together? What is the configuration of the 13 stars together? Do you know how many people I've asked that, and they just look at me with glassy eyes and they don't know what I mean? They don't understand what the word configuration means. They have no idea what I'm talking about. I say, well, the whole 13 stars, all of them together, look at them together and tell me, what do they make? What do they make up? What are you looking at? You'd be surprised how many people just stare at me and stare at the bill and they don't know. And so, once in a while, somebody might be bright enough to say, "Oh, that's a star." Oh, and then I say, "Oh, my God, somebody actually figured it out. Yeah, it's a star." What kind of star? Well, it's a 6-pointed star. That's right. It's a 6-pointed star. A 6 in Latin is hex. So a 6-pointed star is a hex. That goes back to the old Babylonian Sumerian system. Thousands and thousands of years ago, the ancient peoples in Babylon would draw on the ground a triangle and draw an inverted triangle in that triangle. So now you've got a 6-pointed star. Then they would draw a circle around that 6-pointed star. and stand inside of the six-pointed star. And the six-pointed star, as I said, in Latin is a hex. So therefore, they would put the hex on you. So if you're wearing a six-pointed star as a hex, meaning you have the hex put on you. So I don't know if if it bothers you having the hex put on you. It doesn't bother me. I wouldn't wear one. But the Star of David is a hex, and it's been put on the Jews as a hex. So the Jews say, well, we've been persecuted and downtrodden and mistreated. Well, yeah, but you've got the hex put on you.
Wow.
Wake up. A hex is a six-pointed star. And also, go to the Encyclopedia Britannica or any of the big encyclopedias, look up hex, and we'll tell you the Star of David is a hex, but a star which is a six-pointed star, which we call the Star of David, because there was no David, never existed. But a six-pointed star, which we call the hex, was actually, in point of fact, in the reference books, it will tell you, was a six-pointed star represented the planet Saturn. In astral symbolism, Saturn was a six-pointed star, a hex. So Saturn puts the hex on you on Saturn's day. And so that's why today all over the world there's religions, and then the different Christian religions. My God, there's only 2,300 different Christian religions, and must be 25 or 30 different Jewish religions. And in Islam, they got about 10 different Islamic religions. And that's interesting. Why do you have 3 different religions? Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. What's that all about? Why 3? Why 3? Because all religions are based on 3. The triangle, the pyramid on the dollar bill has 3 points. A triangle has 3 points. A pyramid has 3 points. So that's why you always have 3 gods in one. All religions in the world has always been 3 gods in one. Almost every religion that's ever existed had a triune god. Ancient Hindus have Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. 3 gods, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. And in Egypt was Osiris, Isis, Horus. Christianity is Father, Son, Holy Ghost. And Judaism is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There was no Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. They never lived. There were no such people. There was no King David. There was no King Solomon. There was no ancient Israel. The whole idea of Israel was developed in the 8th, 9th, and 10th century A.D. by the Knights Templars, coming back from the Crusades, from fighting the Islamic people. That was all dreamt up by the Knights Templars, or what we call today international bankers. Go back and look it up. Knights Templars in the Roman Catholic Church. Today we call them international bankers. The international bankers, their flag during that time, a long time ago, the international bankers were called Knights Templars, and their flag was a black flag with a skull and crossbones. Today we know that flag, the skull and crossbones on a black background, is called the Jolly Roger. It was the flag representing the Pirates of the Caribbean. The Pirates of the Caribbean were Knights Templars, Roman Catholic Knights Templars, who were robbing on the high seas, killing, murdering on the high seas. Well, that's the way Rome got to be what she is today. She runs the world. Why? Because she stole everything. And if you don't like it, they cut your head off and burn you at the stake and pour hot lead in your baby's face. And, go back and read the history of how the Catholic Church became to be so powerful. They waterboarded women who were pregnant, hold your head on the water so that you would die, and pour hot lead. They would heat up hot lead and pour it in the mouth of children in front of the parents. They would cut off your fingers. They would decapitate you in front of your family. They would tie you to a post and stake and put wood all around you and burn you at the stake. I mean, these people were off the wall. And so today we have people say, well, how the Catholic Church got to be so big and so powerful? Well, hell, if you're in the mafia and you kill people like that, hell, you're going to be real big. Who's going to do anything to you? Nobody's going to touch you. They're scared to death of you because you're crazy. You're murdering people and killing babies and destroying properties and owning people and shit. No wonder the mafia. Go back and watch Godfather 3. You'll see Michael Corleone is being knighted in New York by the Cardinal in New York City. There's a definite connection between the propaganda due P2 and the Knights Templars and the mafia, La Cosa Nostra, and the drug trafficking from Catholic countries like Colombia, Mexico. Catholic countries, wake up. Get it? Well, somebody needs to wake up and find out what time it is. Because we are now in the final and last part of our republic, and now it's going under, and it's going quick. Because nobody understands how this stuff works. And unfortunately, it has nothing to do with anything anybody's interested in. Like I said, got nothing to do with football or Paris Hilton or sex or Hollywood or anything like that. It's a very, very ancient, old, occult and hidden network of words and terms and symbols and money and sex and selling of human beings. Why do you think the Catholic Church has altar boys? Goes back to Abraham offering up his son on an altar. And today the churches are still offering up the young boys. They're called altar boys. An altar is for sacrifice. When you hear all the stuff going on with the kids in the Catholic Church, no, that's what it's all about. The whole thing is sex, period. It's a man's religion. It's sex, period. Well, when you walk into a church, you'll see pointed arch doors and pointed arch windows in the church. That's a female. She's called Mother Church, the female. Pointed arch, get it? And the priests wear robes. That's a feminine robe. The symbolism, if you go back and look at it, is a male inside a female dress. The male inside the female. So,
wow.
Church, people talk about the Lord Jesus was anointed. And we talk, you hear people talking about, he's of the anointed, and he's anointed. You know what the word anointed means? It means sex. And this is why when the Queen of England is anointed queen, or any king or any ruler in the ancient world, and then today too, when any king or any potentate or king or queen is anointed or comes into power, they call themselves anointed. They have a divine right of kings. They've been divinely appointed. Why? How come? Well, because the Pope said that the Queen Mother can be queen, so therefore she has a divine right because he represents God. And he's the Father. So he's a Godfather. You got a problem with that? Open your mouth. You got a problem with that? Nobody else does. All the kings and rulers and princes, they all crawl on their knees and kiss the ring of the Godfather. Wake up. It's a different world than what you thought it was. Anyway.
Wow. We're going to take a quick caller or two, Jordan, because I can see this show right now. This show is going to be all over Facebook, all over Twitter. Because judging by the reaction that I'm getting from my chat room, Jordan, you have blown a lot of minds this evening. And like you said, you haven't even touched the surface.
No, I haven't even touched the surface. I haven't even scraped the surface.
I can't wait till next Monday, but we're gonna try to squeeze in a caller or two. We have a caller from the 860 area code. Caller, if you're there, please state your name and where you're calling from, please.
Hey, what's up? This is Jonathan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Jonathan.
How y'all doing tonight? This is a great show, mind-boggling, mind-opening. But the question I really had was, when did they stop putting, like, you said this is what pertains to birth certificates. When did they stop putting, you said the mother is the informer? See, I looked at my birth certificate, and it didn't say that, but it's, like, directed to the Department of Health. But then at the bottom left hand, it has she. Could you shed some type of light on that?
Yeah, well, what you're looking at is a certified copy of your birth certificate. And certified copy, it just means that there is a birth certificate on the earth somewhere, and this is a certified copy, that there is such a thing as a birth certificate for you. So it's a certified copy, but it's not the birth certificate. It's just a copy that says, yes, there is a birth certificate for this person, and so we are agreeing to it that there is a birth certificate, but it's just certified. But it's not the birth certificate. So
okay, now
what you're seeing is the...
Now, could you shed some light on, with the Social Security card, seeing as that all of them have, like, different letters and numbers? Like,
those numbers and letters on the back of the social... The letters and the numbers on the back of the Social Security card are on the same thing as on the dollar bill. Look at the numbers on the dollar bill and the code numbers on the dollar bill, and you'll see the same thing as on the back of the Social Security card. But I'm going to have to go because I have another show I have to do right now at 7:59, and it's 7:59 now, so I'm going to have to say goodbye. But I appreciate the call. We'll talk another time.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, Jordan. And like I said, I'll be in touch to set up next Monday. Thank you, my friend. We love you. And, believe me, teach them as well as you taught us tonight. Be well, my friend.
Thank you much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And we also want to thank you as well, beloved family, for being here with us this evening on Occult Science Radio. I have to catch my breath. And I know everybody else out there has to catch their breath as well, because I'm quite sure that this is information that you heard this evening that you have never, ever heard before. And the great thing about this, beloved family, is that Jordan Maxwell is going to be with us every Monday evening. And like you said, he hasn't even touched the surface. So please, family, make sure everyone that you know gets this information, hears this broadcast. Anyone who's within earshot of this broadcast and you have a Facebook page, please click the like button. Anyone that has a Twitter account, please tweet this. Please. Because this is the information that we need to wake us up, to get us away from all of this BS. So anyone who didn't get a chance to listen live, or if you're listening to the archive, I beg of you that put this broadcast on whatever social medium that you are affiliated with. Because consider this. The more people that hear this information, the more people that are going to wake up. And the more people that wake up, that loosens the grip and the hold that the quote-unquote global elite have on the masses. Because this is the information that they didn't want to get out. But all truth will come to the light eventually. Once again, beloved family, take the time to visit theoccultnetwork.com. That's just the way it sounds, www.theoccultnetwork.com. And for those of you out there who are on Roku.com, who have Roku boxes, the Occult Network is now on Roku as well. You can find the Occult Network in the special interest section. Just type in the Occult Network in the search on Roku, and there it is. So keep supporting us. Also, join the Occult Network page on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+. We're all over the place. And once again, please, please come look for me on Facebook as well. Curtis Illuminated One Davis. So please, family, click the like button, tweet this, leave comments. Please, the more people that hear this information, the better the world will be. And with that, beloved family, as I always say in closing, peace, love, and power. And please, please, walk with strength. I love you all.